This is Dave. He really enjoys going to the movies. He's always considerate to his fellow moviegoers. This fellow is disturbing everyone around him. Oh, look, Dave is shutting off his phone. Now is not the time for talking or texting. Oh, well, now look at that. There's a true movie-watching friend. Let's all be more like Dave.
This is M-Wire, Movie Week in Review. M-Wire is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up today to get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/geekcastradio. Start today with a free 30-day trial with over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Don't forget to follow Audible on Twitter at audible_com. And now the latest and greatest in movies with M-Wire.
Hello and welcome to M-Wire Movie Week in Review, because we are back in brand new with a brand new format and a whole new outlook on film, the film industry. Well, maybe not.
As well as con art.
Oh, yes, we have a new face over here on M-Wire. Not a new voice, but a new face. I am one of your hosts, Steve Jim Megan. Joining me, as you heard a second ago, Steve Megatron.
Same packaging. Oh.
I'm waiting. Come on.
New product. Losers.
Oh, God. Yeah, so we are here. This is episode 124 of M-Wire. Sorry it's taken us so long, folks. There's been various delays and various things that have happened that have just delayed this episode. But the good news is, you're going to get 3 M-Wires over the next 3 weeks. Because we have episode 124, which we are recording now as we are talking to you people. Isn't that fun? And the 2 weeks after that, we have episodes we recorded over a year ago. Yay! So it's kind of like we're coming to you from the future in the past. So the seeds of the future lie buried in the past, I guess? I don't know.
We aren't going there.
Well, it could be worse. The seeds of the future are buried in your ass.
That's why I'm saying we won't go there.
Oh, God. Oh, boy. Okay, so, episode 124. As I've said since episode 120 of M-Wire, between episode 120 and 150, it's going to be a whole new thing. It's going to be a whole thing of us getting to films and film series and film franchises we have not covered in the 7 years that we've been doing this show. And tonight is no exception, because tonight we all get Terminated, folks. That's right. We're talking about the Terminator franchise. What experience do you have with these 5 films, sir?
I've seen them all.
Well, like, did you see any of them as a kid?
I've seen them as a kid. Obviously saw the first 2. I prefer the second one over any of them, but yeah, I would say that I'm very well versed in some of it. I wouldn't say like I'm a super fan, but I will say I do enjoy 90% of what I've watched of it.
Yeah, there are a lot of super fans out there that know the timeline and know the toys and are from America Junior and all that stuff and everything else. But yeah, we terminated that bastard. I said this because, like I said, we've been trying to get this recorded for the last month and a half. So a month and a half ago, before it left Netflix, I sat down for the first time in my, at that time, 35 years, because I just turned 36 recently. I know, I'm an old bastard. Yeah. Whatever.
Hey, I'm jumping in that hill too, so.
Yeah. You young whippersnappers, get off my lawn.
I'll be saying that soon.
Yeah.
I got 6 months, or actually less than that.
Less than that, yeah. You got 4 months, actually. Oh my God, dude, you got 4 months to the day. We're recording this February 18th, 2016.
Whoa! I almost got the Wayne's World vibe from that. Look at me, pulling references like a Blanchard would.
Uh-huh. Okay, so in my 35 years on this planet, because at the time when I watched the first film, I was not 36 yet. The second film came out in 1991. I was 11 years old by then, so by the time I actually got to see it, I was 12. You know, whenever it hit VHS, I was 12 or whatever, so it was 92 or something or other when I first saw Terminator 2. Terminator 2, much like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, was the first film in the franchise that I had seen. It took me 35 years to see the first film. I had never... I knew of the first film. I knew of the plot of the first film, that Arnold is a bad guy in that at first. So I knew the general plot, but I had never actually seen the first film until about a month and a half ago. And I'm almost glad I never saw it. Not because I don't like it or anything like that, but because, you know, now that I'm much older at this point, I can look back on it and not necessarily have... Nostalgia is weird with me. We're going to eventually do an episode of Geekcast Radio or Altered Geek or something as far as the whole nostalgia thing, but nostalgia is weird for me. Sometimes I have a lot of nostalgia for a lot of stuff, and sometimes I have zero nostalgia for anything. So I kind of like that I went into the first Terminator movie kind of fresh and not really knowing what I was getting into as far as the overall movie and what happens. So yeah, I saw Terminator 2 first when I was a kid. I saw Terminator 1, X number of years later, like I said, a month and a half ago. I had seen Terminator 3, and I know everybody just kind of crapped on that movie. For me, the worst movie in the franchise is Salvation. I cannot stand that movie. Batman as John Connor.
Actually, it wasn't that bad in the sense that it actually took place in the time that it actually was.
Yeah.
Instead of having any time travel aspect to it.
Right, yeah.
So we got to see that mythic period of time that nobody ever got to see. You just get to see in the flashbacks of the first 3 films.
Yeah, yeah. And then we have Genisys, which is essentially a time travel... It's essentially the Terminator franchise's version of Back to the Future 2. The reason why I say that is because they constantly go back and forth in time to fix the timeline in Back to the Future 2. That's essentially what they're doing in Terminator Genisys. I don't dislike Genisys. If I was going to, at this moment right now, rate like from number 1 to number 5 in the franchise as far as best to worst, T2, Terminator 1, Genisys, Rise of the Machines, and then Salvation. Salvation, it's not because of the story. It's not because of where it takes. It's because of the fucking actor. I just can't get past Christian Bale as fucking John Connor. No. Just no. So Terminator, the original movie, it's funny going back and watching something that's 32 years old. I said this when we did the Tron episodes. So many years ago, back in 2011. At that time, I had never seen Tron either. So I was seeing Tron for the first time back in 2011. It really surprises me, not what they got away with in the 80s, but how movies were made in the 80s compared to how they're made today.
Mm-hmm.
And just the locations and how everything looked and all of that. And oh man. Like, a lot of 80s movies now, I don't think, and I know a lot of people are going to say this, that they are. I personally don't think a lot of them are quote-unquote dated. I mean, you can have a dated reference or something, and some films might not stand the test of time or not hold up well, but most of the 80s movies that I watch or that I've seen usually do stand the test of time and usually do hold up well. But just... because I'm now an adult and I've seen, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, that I've watched it. It was just a phase I had. I've watched a ton of HGTV, home searches, all that crap, house hunters and all that. So I always now pay attention to in mostly older films, and I know people are saying, well, the 80s isn't that old. Yes, it is. It's 30, whatever. And I go back and I look at the little things about how clubs were back then or how a house was or whatever else, and it just really amazes me how much the times have changed in our society. So starting with Terminator 1, when did you... Okay, I know you said you saw this as a kid, but do you remember, like, how old you were? Do you remember what your initial reaction was or anything like that?
I remember I was probably maybe around 12 when I saw that.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I would say I enjoyed it, but it definitely was more of a horror movie than an action movie like the later ones turned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in that sense, I think it freaked me out more than anything else.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
It was like watching Batman Returns at that age. Or, yeah, it just freaked me the
Yeah.
hell out.
Yeah, I can really, really see that now. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see where that would happen because it is kind of a freaky movie. So we're gonna take a quick break and come back with talking about the director and talking about the cast, and then we'll talk about the plot. So we'll be back after this.
Come with me if you want to live.
All right, we are back here on M-Wire and briefly talking about the director James Cameron. His major films include, obviously, Terminator, Rambo: First Blood Part 2, Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, True Lies, Strange Days, Titanic, Spider-Man and the Dark Angel. I don't know what that was. Oh, that's a series thing. I mean, the guy is a really, really good director, and he's got a lot of really cool films under his belt there. How many other films of his have you seen before?
I mean, I've seen a decent chunk of them. I mean, The Abyss comes to mind. Like, I've seen Aliens. I've seen, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, I like most of his stuff. It's not... I can't recall a lot of his movies off the top of my head that I remember, like, the entirety of the film, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah. Everyone probably remembers True Lies because of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Never
and all
seen it.
that. You've never seen
No.
True... Really?
No.
It was an Arnold
Surprising,
movie.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
it's
Yeah,
probably
no,
one of
really,
the few Arnold movies I haven't watched besides, like, Expendables, which I know he's into. Still haven't watched any of those up to this date, so...
Okay, that's a discussion for another episode.
Yeah,
because we are gonna...
I mean, don't get me wrong, I
Yeah.
don't have anything against it, I just haven't had a chance to watch it.
So more recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, his biggest directorial thing in the last 7 years or so, honestly, is probably Avatar. And that's actually the last movie he was a director on at this point.
Oh,
The rest of
Avatar?
yeah.
That pile of garbage that he's
Yeah.
insisting on making 2 more sequels to?
Oh god.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope that gets stuck in production hell, but I'm sorry, that's really mean, but I don't care for that film at all. Unobtainium and all. So it's just I'm hating on it.
I mean, he has
personal
a
preference.
good...
He does have a
Yeah.
good canvas of films overall,
Yeah,
and it is
absolutely.
revolutionary for water and for CG and 3D and stuff. But I just don't care for the film.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Cameron's filmography, and I am right now on Wikipedia, he's a director that doesn't shoehorn himself into a specific genre of film.
Oh no, he's very diversified.
Yeah, I mean, you go from, I mean, let's just look at the 80s. You go from stuff like Galaxy of Terror in 1981, which he did not direct. He was a second unit director and production designer on, but the directorial stuff started, well, it started in 78 with Xenogenesis. But in the 80s, Piranha 2, The Spawning, Terminator, obviously. He was a producer, writer on Rambo: First Blood Part 2, not director. Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, and then True Lies. Okay, so as far as directing films, he went from Terminator 2 to True Lies. So that's 3 years difference between those two films. Those are two extremely different films. And then after True Lies, as far as directing, he went from that to Titanic. Which I'm not sure.
That catapulted him heavily into the forefront of film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was already there from doing Terminator and everything else. But But that really threw him over the edge.
Oh yeah. And I'm not sure if we'll ever cover. I'm not saying we as in you and I. I'm saying we as the podcast will ever cover Titanic. Because it's not that I
realize
dislike...
it's based on a true story, and there's a lot of fiction in there. The thing that kind of... I remember watching that as a kid. I'm not a fan of Leo, so I find him to be a weasel on everything he's in. He plays the same character. It's just younger and older versions of the same thing. And that's neither here nor there. My whole thing with him is I just don't like the actor. But in the film, the best part to me is watching all the, and it's horrible because I know it happened in real life, but watching the people bounce on the hole as it cracks in half. So that's just a bad taste on my half, but
at least you admit it.
It's very poor taste. I can't help myself. I think it's hilarious, but that's coming from my, however old brain, 11-year-old, 12-year-old brain at that time. So,
yeah. So I'm not sure if we'll ever cover Titanic because one of my first girlfriends at the time back in high school, we went to see this, and I'm thinking, oh my god, a 3-hour movie. It was the first time I had really seen a 3-hour movie, like a really long movie. And obviously, the girlfriend and I, because it's high school and there's breakups and all that stupid crap and everything else, I'm thinking I sat in a movie theater for this movie, for this chick, for 3 hours. I will never again do this. And that's one of the reasons why I really, we always make references to Titanic and stuff like that and whatever else.
But does your heart go on?
No, not at all. Not for that movie. It's kind of like your your old line from a few years ago, which we will play now before we get into the overall plot of the first film.
I will never buy that movie.
Thank you, Steve, for that line. All right, 1984. Dun dun dun. Terminator. The first movie's plot is basically centered around Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, who is a soldier sent to protect her from the T-800, which is played by Arnold. In this movie, the T-800 is the villain because he is supposed to kill Sarah Connor so Skynet can come online, and so John Connor, her son, will never be born. It was I know I'm going to sound really, really girly when I say this. I don't want to, but I'm going to. Watching this movie for the first time ever was almost kind of magical because it kind of transported me back to a time of completely different movie making. And we'll kind of talk about this when we get to Genisys as well. But, I mean, the overall plot here is essentially they have to
send character back in time, bang John Connor's mom, create John Connor.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're my best friend. And you're my dad.
Yeah, that's true. And the strange thing about this is this film was never really expected to be a success at all.
Nope.
They just figured it was going to bomb, and it has obviously turned into not only a cult classic, but a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, there are tons of Terminator things out there now. I like the first film. I like the effects in it. I like Arnold in it, which is something I never thought I'd say.
Arnold,
I mean, I like Arnold in general, but there are just some movies I've seen him in that just make me wonder why he made those choices.
Because he's an actor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's an actor, because he wants to freeze your hearts. Oh, glorf. The first film I felt was very well paced. I felt it was something that at this point in time in 2016 is almost a true testament to classic filmmaking. And I know people are going to say classic filmmaking, that stuff is from like the 60s and 70s, right? Not necessarily Terminator, but like, you know, normally when people think of classic filmmaking, they think of like really, really old movies. For me, the 80s is old at this point because I am old. You know, like I said, you don't see movie making like this today, obviously, because half of it's CGI, half of it's real, or half of it's stunt work, or if it is stunt work, half of it's not the actual actor doing the stunts because of insurance policies and all this and all that and everything else. But I mean, the first Terminator's plot is pretty straightforward. There aren't too many time glitches with it. I mean, I kind of figured like halfway into the movie after meeting Kyle Reese that he was eventually going to be John's father. But what were your overall impressions of the plot?
I mean, I think it was pretty straightforward. Guy comes from future to save Mother Rebellion, you know, and then, you know, ends up making the ultimate sacrifice to preserve the future.
Yep.
So I mean, it's very, very straightforward in how it's portrayed.
Mm-hmm. And then there's Terminator 2 Judgment Day, or as most of us just call it, T2 Judgment Day at this point. The budget on this movie, on the second movie, $94 million. It made $519.8 million at the box office. That's not counting DVD sales and whatever else. Basically, this is the one where we see John Connor as a kid. And the T-1000 is the new model, the new assassin. The 800 is sent back
Yesterday's technology.
Yeah. He's sent back to save John Connor because John Connor sends him back to save himself. So instead of having to save Sarah, you have to save John. I gotta say, man, this movie still is amazing. I mean, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, you got Robert friggin' Patrick as the T-1000. It's just epic. That cop, oh my god, or that T-1000, jeez, that thing, that liquid metal, wow.
He hasn't aged well for being a liquid metal man.
Actually, I think he has aged pretty well.
Depends on the show.
Have you ever watched Scorpion?
Slightly. He's aged decent in that, but like everything else, he's like a scruffy nerf herder.
Oh my god. No, he does not look like Harrison Ford. Besides, he's dead.
Only not in that movie. He's going to be back in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And then Indiana Jones. But they're going to kill him off in everything he's in now, so that's kind of the way of the future.
That's just a scary, scary thought at this point.
How many of our old actors are they going to kill off in all these movies now?
All of them, probably.
We're passing the torch. Where's the young blood? Where's the young blood?
I'm just waiting for, Kirk to show up in Star Trek.
He wants to. They just won't let him. They're like, you're too old. He's like, I'm 87 or 85 years old. I'm Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Screw your pine.
Oh boy. All right, so Terminator 2, this movie, I watched this recently as well, obviously in preparation for this, and basically this is when they're trying to stop Judgment Day. Judgment Day is supposed to be in 1997, which we actually survived it at this point. So no Skynet, yay! I love the fight stuff. I love the fight scenes in this movie. The fight scenes are so epic. Not just the actual fights, but like the chases and the gunplay and all the action in this movie is just amazing.
Yeah, T2 is definitely my favorite as far as action and plot and story and everything. It's definitely a lot more solid. So in that regard, I'm very loving of this movie. And then the fact that they turned the table and made you think that Arnold's T2 body was actually made you think that he was the bad guy when actually he was the good guy of this film, which was odd.
Yeah, but no, I like that changeover. Like the first one, he was kind of the villain, and then this one, he's kind of the protector, because the timeline that they're following at this point, John basically says you have to go back and save my mother and all that and everything else.
And John Connor. Hasta la vista, baby.
I think this is the first time I had seen a movie where a human was trying to teach a robot something.
Transformers. Spike.
Well, Spike was an adult in the movie.
I'm talking about the animated series.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but I'm saying like an actual movie where it's, a live action movie where you have this sentient robot and the human is trying to teach him, hey, no, you shouldn't do that, or hey, no, you can't be that violent, or no, that's not how that works. It's like John Connor was a mother hen throughout this entire film. So we have the funny thing is they as far as the film goes, as far as its legacy, they released an extended version of it as part of the Terminator quadrilogy box set alongside the other Terminator films in 2015 last year. Didn't have any special features though. And then to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the film, it will be digitally remastered into 3D with worldwide re-release planned.
Dun dun dun.
Oh my god. Okay, so when this news article came out, oh god, I don't know, 3 months ago, whenever I don't even remember when the whole Terminator 3D conversion thing came out. I am so anti 3D. I just don't get it, and I don't understand. I mean, okay, films of today, I understand, that's fine. But why would you go back and make a 3D conversion of a film that was not even shot for 3D or as 3D or anything like that?
Well, they did do part of it in 3D at the parks.
Yeah, but that's the parks, though, and the parks are supposed to be something like this is a 3D movie you can now go see. Not now, as in right this very moment, people, but this is gonna be a 3D but it's fine in 2D. We don't need a third damn dimension. They need to just stop thinking fourth dimensionally, too. Oh, my God. And honestly, for the 25th anniversary, all it is another... I hate to say this, but it's a cash grab, really, is what it is for me.
Everything's a cash grab now. That's why they're reinventing old franchises and bringing them back and making us care.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And then we have Rise of the Machines. This one came out in 2003, so this movie's 13 years old at this point. It had a budget of 187.3 million, 167.3 million excluding production overhead. It made 433.4 million, so it made its money back. In this film, John Connor has been living off the grid in Los Angeles in the years following the death of his mother, Sarah Connor, from leukemia. Although Judgment Day did not occur on August 29th, 1997, as expected, John still believes that a war between humans and the machines will occur. Unable to locate John in the past, Skynet sends a new model of the Terminator called the TX, played by, oh my god, dude. We have a Boy Meets Terminator combination here, because Christiana Loken, who plays Jennifer Bassett in Boy Meets World, is the TX.
I knew she looked familiar, just couldn't figure out from what.
Uh-huh. Yep. And she went on to marry Minkus. Anyway, in this movie, the new Terminator is a female. The Resistance does send back a reprogrammed Terminator 850 Model 101 to protect the TX's targets. You have Claire Danes as John Connor's future or potentially future wife. That was a little strange bit of casting. I don't need. Okay, so on the cast list for this, it says under Claire Danes as a note, she was a last-minute replacement for an actress named Sophia Bush. I've never even heard of Sophia Bush. She was Sally in Van Wilder. I still don't know who the hell she is.
She did WB shows at one point. I didn't see any of them, but she's on, I think, a cop show now, like Chicago.
Yeah, she's on Chicago Med. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What did you think of the plot for this one?
While I enjoyed it, some of it did. I don't. This one was like I don't know. I don't. The whole thing was probably avoidable. Like when they were about to put the Skynet thing on, all they had to do is like not turn it on, and then it would have just sabotaged the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it would have killed Skynet at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
So like the whole movie was like leading up to an event that could have not happened had they just said no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I like the whole thing. I don't mind. I actually like the chemistry between John and Kate. I think that's kind of cool. I like the premise of them trying to find Skynet's central core or whatever, although in this movie it doesn't seem to have a central core. And they end up in this this old bomb shelter kind of thing. I thought that was kind of cool. And compare this to T2. T2 was a lot more technical as far as the technology goes. As far as the look of the technology, it was a lot more sleek and whatever else. In this, it just seemed like maybe it's because there's not a lot of like rooms with computers in this one. This one seemed like it was a lot more outside shots than inside shots.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely seemed more more
outdoorsy.
Yeah.
And I like Arnold in this. And apparently when you have public office, you can't star in a movie. Because this is...
You didn't have time. You're talking about for Salvation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it says here that the Rise of the Machines was Arnold's last starring role before becoming the governor of California. Um, but I mean, I understand why people may not like Rise of the Machines, but I still enjoy it. I think it's not a movie I'm gonna go back to. Like, it's no T2 or it's no T1. Like, I actually want to go back and rewatch T1 again. Like, it's a movie I want to go rewatch in, like a month or so, or, whatever else. And, see if I see it in a different light. Same thing with T2. Even though I've just seen these films recently over the last month and a half, I almost want to see the first two films again just to kind of see if I notice anything different or get anything more out of the stories. T3, while I like the film, I don't necessarily need to go back and rewatch it again.
I kind of agree with you.
Yeah. And then there is the lack of salvation.
What happened to it?
This movie is set in the time that we have always heard about. This movie is set with adult John Connor trying to stop Skynet at any cost. And yes, I did just throw in an Optimus Prime line there.
No matter the cost.
Mm-hmm. So you have two different years pretty much in this one. You got 2003 and 2018. You have this guy named Marcus Wright. Basically, he's a death row inmate, and he basically signs over his body to medical research following his salvation. 1 year later, the automated system Skynet is activated, begins to perceive humans as a threat, and eradicates much of humanity with nuclear weapons in the event known as Judgment Day. Dun dun dun.
Beef, it's what's for dinner.
Yep. Where's the beef? I just, what I think the Terminator franchise to this point has been is, whenever the time is, whether it's 2017, whether it's 2018, whether it's 2029, it doesn't matter. Whatever future time there is that John or Sarah or whomever sends Arnold back, or sends whomever, sends Kyle Reese back, between this, I just think that future time is something that at this point in the franchise, when we get to Salvation, I didn't want to see the future. I had no interest. In seeing the dystopian future that John Connor lives in, where he sends somebody back. I had no interest in seeing that at all. And that's what this movie is. This movie is, hey, we're going to show you what we've been talking about for the last three films over the last, well, when did this movie come out? This Salvation came out in 2009. Oh my God, 6 years ago. So 2009, 1984, for about 30 something years, they've been talking about the time where John, sometime in the future, John Connor will send, this Terminator back, or that. That to me is a sacred time that we should not need to know, not necessarily want to know, but not need to know about, or not need to explore, because they pretty much explain it to you. Oh my God, Skynet took over. The world is fucked. We don't need to. Okay, you've said the world is fucked. We don't need to see how fucked up the world is, really, right? I know I'm nitpicking here. I get it, but I'm sorry. I do not need to see Batman as John Connor. I am sorry. They could have gotten a completely better actor.
Well, from what I heard on set anyway, and I actually have heard the audio clip, somebody leaked. The whole thing with Christian Bale is he was a total asshat in the he was a complete disaster to work with. And he screamed at some PA or somebody that got in the middle of his shot. And
I remember that.
And
yeah.
I remember reading about it, and then I actually listened to it, and I was like, wow, he's kind of a dick. And then it made me not really like him as an actor, just because the melodrama. Like it was unneeded.
About the only movie I can actually watch him in at this point is Dark Knight.
Yeah, I mean I can, but
that's pretty much the only one. You know, I almost wish there was notes on this one where it says, you know, stuff like, oh, this person was originally, you know how, you know, when we do reviews or when we do discussions of classic movies like the original Terminator T2, where it has all these notes of, oh, this person was originally sought for the role, or that, like, I wish we knew who else was sought for the role for John Connor for this movie. Yeah. But Terminator Salvation, easily the worst in the franchise for me.
Oh, yeah.
So we are going to take another quick break, come back with our discussion on Terminator Genisys after this.
I'll be back.
All right, folks, it is time to launch Genisys.
The worst for infiltration units designed to pass for human. We called them Terminators.
Terminator Genisys came out July 1st of last year. When you first heard about this, when you first saw like a plot snippet or synopsis, or because I know Steve isn't one, and I'm kind of not one for spoilers. It doesn't really matter to me. I just want to know half the time. But when you first heard about this, what was your reaction?
Honestly, I was kind of for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like I like Arnold anyhow.
Yeah.
So I'm biased in that regard. So when they announced that they were going to have him reprise, I was kind of excited. And then yeah, I mean I pretty much knew what I was going to get as far as that. And then I love the fact that they had to recreate a lot of the footage because of issues with the rights.
Right.
Like they didn't own any of the rights to the original footage. It was to belong to the original studio. So they had no choice then to recreate it.
Right.
And then the footage that they used, I mean, it was I kind of...
It was pretty spot on. Like, because for me, the way I watched these kind of out of order. I watched, when I watched the 5 films, I didn't watch them 1 to 5. I watched Terminator 2 and 3 first, and then went and watched Terminator 1, and then Salvation, which I can... And then I watched this, and I had more of a connection, obviously, with the first movie and with this movie. And going back and comparing the footage that they used was like, wow, hey, because Terminator Genisys, folks, is essentially an alternate timeline movie based on the first film, kind of. They obviously change it where they make, and spoilers, people. If you haven't seen it, the movie's been out for a year. If you haven't seen it yet, well, sorry. Where they basically make John Connor a Terminator. Like, I never saw that coming. I thought that was awesome. Because it throws it into a completely different timeline. Because you think, the whole time I was seeing the opening scene, I'm like, oh, hey, this is just like the first movie. So that means they're going to basically do the first movie. Oh, I actually thought Genisys was going to be a piece of crap at first. And then as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, oh no, this isn't like they're spinning it, they're twisting it. And I just thought it was great.
Yeah, they actually did something that you wouldn't really expect. And that was kind of a nice nod in that regard. And so I was pretty happy with that. And I think that they did fairly well with what they had to do. The overall premise of it was good. I think that it did suffer a little, being that it was supposed to be kind of the John Connor, the bad guy, and then the fact that the trailers, and this is any Terminator movie, it's not even this one. Every one of the movies suffer because of the fact that they give away all this stuff in the trailer.
Right.
And that was kind of disheartening for the film, because I was really expecting some big things from it, and then the fact that they kind of butchered it before it really even got a chance to stand on its own.
Yeah. I wish, and I don't understand, and maybe the listeners can explain this to me. Comment in the section on this episode. When a movie studio wraps a movie, it's done. It's ready to go to print, cut, release, whatever. Obviously, after they do this, or even during the production of the film, they figure out certain sections and certain scenes and little mini clips and whatever else, and then they send it to whatever trailer company it is, because the movie studio does not cut, as far as I know, and again, people can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, as far as I know, the movie studio themselves, the director, the editors, they don't do the trailer cuts. It's a separate company completely. So what I'm wondering is, do the director, the producers, the whatever, go to the trailer company and say, hey, can you cut this to fit this scene, this scene, this scene, and this scene? Or is it like they take what they want to the trailer company, and then whoever, Joe Blow, Milton in the corner with his red stapler over there is putting the movie together, the trailer together. Like, that's what I want to know, is how do the trailer companies go about putting the trailer together, whatever that, not the teasers, I'm talking about the full trailers.
It's not the studio.
Right. No, I know, but I'm saying, my other question is, I want to know how the trailer companies go about putting together, like, who makes the decision of what scene goes where, how the final that's what I want to know, is how is the final product for a trailer made. I only saw, I think, maybe one or two trailers for Genisys.
I saw
I don't even, okay, well, I honestly don't even remember, I don't even remember what I saw. Like, for me, and you know this, I'll see a trailer and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, I'll see that eventually, or oh my god, I have to go see this, or I just don't, I'll see it whenever, just kind of indifferent to it. I didn't really have a notion to really see this in the theater, and I didn't see it until, like I said, about a month ago or so. But it's been so long since I've seen the trailer that I don't remember the trailer. So when I went into the movie, when I went into pop the whatever, use the digital whatever, it was just kind of like being fresh to me. So I don't even remember any kind of spoilery stuff from the trailer at all. I think this movie, like I said in the beginning of the show, is probably for me, it's the third best out of the five. Because once I realized it was going to be an alternate timeline story, I'm like, ooh, what little changes are they going to make? What little things are they going? How are they going to screw the timeline up? How are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? And the fact that they basically changed the front lines, or the main thing of Skynet to Genisys, I thought that was kind of cool, because they're like, hey, this is, there's this new app, there's this new technology, there's, Google's taking over the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it's called Genisys, and it's going to be awesome because you can do anything and everything with it, and blah, 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 blah. I thought that was really cool. They basically hid Skynet under this false pretense. I liked all the time travel. I actually enjoyed John Connor more as a bad guy than a good guy. Because like I've already said, that whole time of when he is supposed, that dystopian future when he's supposed to send the Terminator back, it's like, hey, I don't really need to know about that. But what were your thoughts and feelings after seeing Genisys as far as the overall plot?
For one, I wanted to see more, even though it may or may not happen now.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I really hope that there is another movie. But if there's not, I'm happy with what we got. It kind of, I don't know, it switched things up enough that it's not the same old song and dance that we've had every single freaking film.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why I think Genisys is one of the better of the franchise. It's definitely better than Salvation, in my personal opinion. This is a movie. This and the first one are two movies at this point in my life that I would definitely rewatch. Like I said, a few years down the line. I just really enjoyed Genisys. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like Jai Courtney as an actor.
I think he's terrible, but
yeah, and I don't know who else you could have as a young Kyle Reese though. I don't.
I mean, somebody else that would want to play it.
Yeah. I'm just not too sure on that as far as who else would be, would be a good fit for the character and for what, happened with the movie. I thought his acting performance in this was all right. What did you think of them making Arnold's Terminator kind of like the Guardian, kind of like almost like Sarah's dad?
I mean, I was fine with that. It didn't bother me. The one thing I will say, I think it's funny they finally upgraded the T-800.
Mm-hmm.
Finally upgraded.
See, that's the one thing that kind of has me clamoring for another Terminator.
But that means they can anti-age Arnold in the movies.
Yeah, true. And plus, at this point, he kind of needed an upgrade, obviously, right? Because all the other movies at this point, he could never do anything that the T-1000 or the T-3000 or the TX or any of that. Like, the 800 and the 850 101 models, they were really, really limited in what they were able to do. So I'm kind of really glad that they did upgrade him. To that. So the potential of sequels doesn't really isn't kind of really happening at this point, folks, sadly. Yeah, planned sequels. As of January of this year, Paramount announced that the sequel was removed from their release schedule. So
let's hope they get them done though before something happens to our lead fan.
Wait. Hold on. Okay, so from January of this year, and I'm going to read this verbatim. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. The next chapter in the Terminator franchise has been taken off the release calendar, Paramount announced Wednesday. Paramount and Skydance Entertainment's Terminator 2 was set to hit theaters May 19, 2017. Instead, the studio said Baywatch will open in its place. Wait, why? Sadly, Genisys was widely viewed as a disappointment. I don't see why Genisys was viewed as a disappointment. I mean, I just don't get that at all. Overall, I'm not a super fan of the Terminator franchise. I like the movies fine enough, but I'm not like die hard. And as I've already,
I will say I did enjoy this film more than the last two.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because this film was essentially, like I already said, kind of pulling it Back to the Future 2 and timeline changing and whatever else. I really thought turning, John Connor, the hopeful savior of the human race, into the villain, I really thought that, that general plot of turning the hero into the villain happens all the time. But in a franchise that has spanned over 30 years, he's always been this hero figure, this quote-unquote messiah type. And, oh my God, the savior of the human race. I really dug seeing him as the villain. And the guy who played him was damn good at playing him. So, all right, folks. I think that's going to do it for MWire 124. Coming up, we have the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, and then Movie Roll. Dan and I in episode 126 will have The Hustler, and then after that, who knows? But those episodes were recorded over a year ago. There will be a little bumper in the front of each one of them saying so, but they still stand the test of time, I guess. Where can the people reach you online, sir?
They can get a hold of me on the Twitters at SCP21.
I am at TFG on Mike. You can follow at Geekcast Radio. You can follow at GCRN MWire, all that other good stuff. Unleash the movie geek in you. Keep those film reels rolling, and we will catch you next time.
You've just listened to Movie Week in Review on GeekCastRadio.com. If you would like to leave feedback on the show, there are many ways to do so. First, you can visit the website, GeekCastRadio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. Be sure to rate our show on iTunes and leave us feedback. You can follow us on Twitter at GCRN MWire. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.
In a world, there, I said it, happy,